Hello again, I'm Stephen Wells, the host of the Motoring Weekly podcast for the Australian Historic Road and Racing community, and this is episode 121. This week is a great event in New South Wales, the Mini Moke Roundup, a 5-day tour of mini mokes based in Tamworth and exploring the countryside. Last week I had the great pleasure to meet with a small group of owners heading northwest for the event. They had travelled from the south coast up to the Northern Beaches where I met them. After a few days on the beaches, they were visiting the Newcastle area before heading inland to Tamworth, making it a week to get to the roundup. And I had a few minutes with the group leader, Colin Loudon, with his immaculate moke on the headland near the fictional Summer Bay, aka Palm Beach, overlooking the cars and the ocean. So I'm with Colin from the south coast, who's on a journey with a number of mini mokes up to a moke roundup in Tamworth next week. We're at Palm Beach, so we've got the sound of the sea behind us, and we've got 6 mokes in front of us. Colin, how long have you had your car?
This particular one we've had now for 14 years. We bought it off the edge of the road, supposedly road ready for registration, but then it cost us another $30,000 to rebuild it to what it is today. Now, since we've done that, we have toured the East Coast extensively. We've been far as Queensland, right down to Tasmania twice, Tamworth 5 times, Mornington Peninsula, crisscrossing back of Canberra right out as far as Wellington, and all that sort of country. And we do it because the sort of people we've met through moking is like an extended family. If you have a problem, it's not a problem. If your car breaks down, they can't repair it on the side of the road, there's somebody there with a trailer, they get you back to the base camp and the car is on the road next morning.
It's a bit of a family of, as you call them, mokers. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, I would say that, mokers. Like, we're a member of the Moke Owners Association of Victoria, Sydney Moke Owners Group. We're tied up with the Tasmanian group, South Australian Moke Owners, and we run Moking Jervis Bay ourselves. And we run small events every 2 years, specifically around mokers. But if you haven't got a moke, I don't care if you turn up your Bentley, your little Fiat, whatever. As long as you don't try and do it on a push lawnmower or a ride-on mower, we're quite happy. But we predominantly do dirt roads. We get off the beaten track for what these cars are designed for, and we have a ball doing it. That's why we do it.
So in my research, because I love the mokes, and I was talking to you last night at the Pittwater Motor Enthusiasts meeting, that I was born just south of Port Merion, where they had the moke in the TV series. And the fascinating thing is that these cars were built not just in the UK, but also in Rhodesia, in Malaysia, and also here. In fact, more cars were built here at Zetlands in Sydney than in the UK.
That's correct. Now, the production of these finished worldwide in 1993. They started around 1964, designed in 1963, roughly at the same time as the Mini was. And they were originally a military parachute vehicle. But the English did the right thing and put the wrong size wheels on them and too small a motor. So they decided, well, all this development, what are we going to do with it? So next thing, they've turned them into a cult vehicle for the public. And that's where they've taken off. And even now, there's a couple of thousand of them be running around in Australia to this day. And people even now are still buying rusted out wrecks and rebuilding the bodywork to keep them on the road. There's not a part we can't buy. Mm-hmm. We can have anything sent in from South Australia if it's a reasonable part package overnight. Order at 3, have it at 12.
So the Australian built ones were slightly different, weren't they? They had bigger wheels, and were they had a different ride height for the conditions here?
Well, what they ended up doing, they started with 10-inch wheels, which were introduced in 1965 in Australia, but they come out with a 13-inch wheel because there are too many people getting stuck on the rural properties, which was their target market. So they come out with 13-inch wheels, which gave them a better ride height, better gearing. Then the motor sizes went from 850s to eventually 1275s. Most of these cars here you see today are running probably a 1310, which is the Cooper S block in the later models.
Okay, so they've been modified even more since they came out of the factory.
Oh yeah, and you have a look at these 6 Mokes here, not one of them will be identical. Everybody puts their own personality on them. Ours has eyelashes on it. It's bright pink, and most people say, what do you want a pink car for? Is that original colour? Yes, it was. They did come out in pink in the 70s, and it was known as Plum Loco, even though it's a pink colour. Ours is actually lighter in shade to the original pink, but the eyelashes on it is our target market. It's a chick machine, and when it's in parade, you get the big cheers. That's why we do it, to catch the kids' eyes, the young women. They just love them.
So these are only, about 500 kilos in weight?
About 610 is dry weight. So they're not very heavy, and power to weight, they're a pretty good little car.
So they'll be pretty good round corners. They're like a bit of a skateboard, are they?
Well, if you have a look at the back of the blue one here, it's his own little go-kart. Because if we lower ours, we've got adjustable suspension. If we lower it down 2 inches, it is literally a go-kart. You put it around corners at nearly double the speed it's posted, but the way we run it for road trim and touring, we keep it at normal height, but even that, you'll still go around quicker on a corner once you're used to the car than what you will in a modern car.
And you're saying that you've been all over the place in yours in the last 14 years. So you are running events, or are they just for yourself and your wife?
No, lots of the time we do attend the events. We've attended quite a few in Melbourne. We've supposed to be one in South Australia, but I wasn't well enough to be there. But they run the format that we run Moke in Jervis Bay on. The one we go to Tamworth every second year, that's a Moke event. But when we run them, we do not care what you turn up in. It's about cars, historic cars. We've had people running around in a modern car and followed us, but they're Mokers at heart, and they're in the process of either restoring one, or their children were too young to put into the Moke, so mum drives the family car and dad's having fun in the hot rod.
So you've just come up from the southern coast. You're here on the Northern Beaches. Where next?
Well, we come up from the south coast of Jervis Bay. First stop was here in Narrabeen Lakes. We're here for 3 days. Then we're going up to Swansea for another 3 days. Then from Swansea we will go through up to Tuncurry. Then from Tuncurry we're going to disappear up over the Thunderbolt Way into Tamworth, where we'll be for another 7 days.
That's a great run up through Thunderbolt's Way, so I'm sure you guys are going to enjoy it. How many Mokes do you think you'll see up in Tamworth?
At this stage there's 45 booked in.
Okay, so it's a good crew, and I've looked at the itinerary for the event over about 3 days next week. So that's really going to be some fun trips around that New England area.
It is, and they're places, the two guys running it, they've done a tremendous job, because a lot of it's on back roads and across private properties, which is still public access ways, but they take you in areas you would never normally go to in Tamworth, because normally if you go to Tamworth you're on the main roads and just drift through it. But we wind all over the area, even though we've been there 4 times before. They change the route and you come into these little towns from a different way, and it's just a pleasure to be there and do it and support their Katingal Car Club as well. So that's just another, thing that we do. If we support one another, we have success with the cars. And we're here today on a run which is put together for the Pittwater Historic Vehicle Club to showcase their area for us while we're visiting, and we are really appreciative of what they've done.
And once you leave Tamworth, is it a straight run back, or are you doing a detour to extend your trip on the road?
No, we'll probably come back in through Port Stephens, because the people that are travelling with us have never been in there. And my wife was there as a young child, so we'll drip in through Port Stephens for a couple of days, then we'll head back home.
It sounds like a fabulous trip in these cars, and so I think you're going to have a thoroughly enjoyable time up there. Thank you, Colin. It's been great to come and see the cars and have a chat to you.
No, well, thank you for taking the time out for showcasing what we do. And a lot of times when we do this, it's the attention we attract from people, the kids' faces. We do Christmas parades, all that sort of thing, but they do Anzac parades and that as well. It's for the benefit of we get out of it, but the people see these historic cars running around, and it brings back so many memories to them. To us, our job's done.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That's all for this week. It was great to meet the Mini Moke owners. Every one of the cars was unique in some way, with all of them having uprated motors. And a fun fact, Mini Mokes were built in Australia, Rhodesia as it was known, Malaysia and Portugal for far longer than the UK factory. And electric Mokes are now built in China through a tie-up between Jaguar Land Rover, who owns the name, and Chery. Now, I've put a link to the roundup in the podcast detail, and if you have a club or event that you would like highlighted, send an email to stephen@motoringweekly.com.au and I'll be in touch. And don't forget to subscribe through your favourite podcast player and get the episodes delivered as they are published, or subscribe to the website and listen there. I'm Stephen Wells, and you've listened to Motoring Weekly, the podcast for the Australian historic road and racing community.